You're not failing because of effort. You're stuck inside the wrong perception of success. This audiobook rewires your brain so your system craves achievement and extraordinary results become your new default. The Winner Formula. Audiobook. Introduction. Success leaves clues, but not the ones most people are looking for. In an age of unlimited information and endless how-to guides, an intriguing paradox emerges. Access to knowledge has never been greater, yet breakthrough achievement remains remarkably rare. You've likely experienced this frustration firsthand, watching others with similar talents surge ahead while implementing the same strategies that leave you spinning your wheels. The truth is, most approaches to achievement focus on the wrong target. They emphasize doing different things when the real transformation happens by seeing things differently. This isn't just metaphorical, it's neurological. Your brain literally constructs your reality based on your perceptual filters, determining what opportunities you recognize, what challenges you're equipped to handle, and ultimately, what results are possible for you. Think of how champions approach their craft. They don't just work harder or smarter, they inhabit a completely different perceptual reality. Where others see obstacles, they recognize invitations. Where others feel pressure, they experience excitement. This isn't a technique they've learned. It's a fundamental shift in how their nervous system processes the world around them. This book introduces a revolutionary premise. Lasting success isn't something you chase through willpower and discipline. It's something you become addicted to at the cellular level. Just as your body craves nutrients it needs, your entire system can be reconditioned to hunger for achievement, making excellence your default state rather than an exhausting uphill battle. Unlike traditional self-help that offers temporary motivation or rigid systems, this work guides you through a profound reconditioning of how you perceive yourself and your possibilities. You'll discover why the same circumstances that limit others become launching pads for those who have undergone this perceptual transformation. The journey ahead will systematically reshape your relationship with achievement itself. Through powerful perspective shifts backed by cutting-edge neuroscience, you'll experience a fundamental upgrade in how your brain processes opportunities, challenges, and your own capabilities. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about removing the perceptual limitations that have kept your natural brilliance contained. You're about to discover why winners don't just act differently, they see differently. Every chapter builds upon this core truth, revealing specific shifts in perception that literally reorganize your brain's response to challenges and opportunities. By the final page, success won't be something you pursue. It will be the natural expression of who you've become. The potential for extraordinary achievement already exists within you. Now it's time to transform how you see it. Chapter 1. The Perception Gap. Why effort alone never leads to extraordinary results. Two mountain climbers face the same peak. One sees an impossible wall of obstacles, feeling every step as a battle against gravity. The other perceives a natural flow of handholds and leverage points, moving in harmony with the mountain's geometry. Same mountain, radically different experiences, not because of skill or preparation, but because of perception. You've experienced this divide. Perhaps you've watched others navigate challenges with apparent ease, while you feel every step as resistance. You've implemented the same strategies, invested similar effort, yet achieved dramatically different results. The question isn't just why, it's how two people can look at identical circumstances and see completely different realities. The answer lies not in what you do, but in how your brain processes reality itself. Your nervous system doesn't simply record the world like a camera. It actively constructs your experience through sophisticated filtering mechanisms. This neurological architecture, centered in your reticular activating system, RAS, determines what information reaches your conscious awareness from the millions of data points bombarding your senses each moment. This filtering system creates what neuroscientists call perception-based potential, a framework that literally determines what opportunities you can recognize in your environment. Imagine your perception as a house with different windows in each room. The same landscape exists outside, but each window frames a distinct view, highlighting certain elements while concealing others. When you change rooms, you instantly access a different perspective without anything in the external world changing. High achievers haven't just learned new techniques. They've developed perceptual filters that automatically highlight opportunities, resources, and solutions that remain invisible to others. This isn't positive thinking or wishful optimism. It's a fundamental reconstruction of how their nervous system processes reality. Consider how this plays out in practical terms. Where one person sees a market downturn as a career-ending catastrophe, another perceives unprecedented opportunities for innovation. Where someone experiences criticism as devastating judgment, another recognizes valuable feedback for growth. These aren't different circumstances. They're different perceptual filters creating vastly different experienced realities. The neuroscience behind this phenomenon reveals why traditional approaches to achievement often fall short. When you attempt new behaviors while maintaining old perceptual filters, you're essentially trying to flow in one direction while your nervous system is oriented toward another. This creates the exhausting experience of constantly pushing against your own natural tendencies. Understanding this mechanism explains why exposure alone doesn't guarantee opportunity recognition. You could be surrounded by potential breakthroughs without noticing them if your perceptual filters aren't tuned to those frequencies. This is why two people can operate in the same environment, yet experience entirely different levels of possibility. Your brain's filtering system isn't fixed. It's highly adaptable when approached correctly. By understanding how your current perceptual filters shape your experienced reality, you can begin the process of consciously returning them. This isn't about forcing yourself to think differently. It's about restructuring how your nervous system naturally processes information. The key lies in recognizing that your current perception of what's possible isn't an accurate reflection of reality. It's a constructed interpretation based on accumulated filters. These filters weren't consciously chosen. They developed through past experiences, cultural conditioning, and unconscious assumptions about how the world works. When you grasp this fundamental truth, every challenge becomes an opportunity to examine and adjust your perceptual filters. What seems like an insurmountable obstacle might actually be a reflection of limiting filters rather than external reality. What appears as scarcity might be an artifact of perception rather than actual resource limitations. This understanding opens the gateway to profound transformation. By working directly with your perceptual filters rather than just your actions, you can create change at the level of how your brain constructs reality itself. This is where lasting transformation begins, not in what you do, but in what you're capable of perceiving. Chapter 2: The Addiction Advantage: Rewiring Your Brain's Reward System. What if the same neurological machinery that creates destructive addictions could be deliberately reprogrammed to make success itself addictive? This question strikes at the heart of why so many of us struggle with consistent achievement. You know what you should do, you understand the strategies, yet somewhere between intention and implementation, something gets lost. The frustration you feel isn't from lack of knowledge. It's from an incomplete understanding of how your brain's reward system actually works. Modern neuroscience has revealed that achievement and addiction operate through identical neural pathways. The same dopamine-driven circuits that can trap someone in destructive patterns can be intentionally rewired to make excellence your default state. Your brain doesn't distinguish between positive and negative addictions. It simply responds to reward patterns, reinforcing behaviors that trigger dopamine release. When you understand this mechanism, you can systematically engineer your environment and habits to create success triggers that make achievement neurologically rewarding. The process works through four key components: anticipation, action, reward, and reinforcement. Each element can be intentionally designed rather than left to chance. Anticipation builds through environmental cues that prime your brain for action. These triggers can be as simple as a specific location, time of day, or ritual that signals impending reward. Action becomes automated through consistent pairing with reward signals. The reward itself must be immediate and clearly linked to the desired behavior. Reinforcement strengthens these neural pathways through repetition and escalating challenges. What makes this approach particularly powerful is the concept of dopamine scheduling. Your brain responds more strongly to variable rewards than consistent ones. This explains why social media is so addictive. You never know when you'll get that next hit of validation. By deliberately varying the predictability and magnitude of achievement-related rewards, you create stronger behavioral patterns than through rigid systems. Think of your mind as a garden where attention acts as water and sunlight. Whatever you consistently focus on grows stronger. Each time you check social media, watch entertainment, or engage in low-value activities, you're strengthening those neural pathways. Conversely, every moment spent in purposeful action toward your goals reinforces achievement circuits. This isn't about relying on motivation or willpower. It's about engineering your environment to naturally pull you toward excellence. Simple changes in how you structure your space, schedule your time, and respond to small wins can dramatically reshape your brain's reward expectations. Consider how your current environment might be inadvertently reinforcing unproductive patterns. Your phone offers instant gratification through notifications and social validation. Television provides effortless entertainment. Junk food delivers immediate pleasure. These aren't moral failings. They're predictable responses to engineered dopamine triggers. The key is not to fight these tendencies, but to redirect them. Start by identifying the specific cues, routines, and rewards that currently drive your behavior. Then systematically restructure them to support your goals. Place your running shoes by your bed instead of your phone. Create a dedicated workspace that signals focused effort. Celebrate small progress immediately and specifically. Initial resistance is normal. Your brain is wired to prefer familiar patterns. But understanding that this resistance is temporary and natural makes it easier to push through. Each time you choose the growth action over the comfort action, you're literally rewiring your neural pathways. When you align your environment with your aspirations, progress becomes automatic rather than forced. You'll find yourself naturally drawn to activities that support your goals, not because you're pushing yourself, but because you've reconditioned your brain's reward system. This is how consistent achievement becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Your brain's reward system is already working perfectly. It's just currently optimized for comfort rather than growth. By understanding and deliberately redirecting these natural mechanisms, you can transform success from something you pursue into something you can't help but achieve. The same neurological machinery that makes scrolling through social media compulsive can make excellence your default state. The power of this approach lies in working with your brain's natural tendencies rather than against them. You're not building motivation, you're engineering addiction in its most empowering form. By aligning your deepest drives with meaningful achievement, you transform what was once a draining battle of willpower into an energizing pursuit that pulls you forward. This isn't about forcing yourself to want what's good for you. It's about restructuring your internal reward system until excellence becomes your default setting, as natural and necessary as breathing. Chapter 3. The Identity Threshold. Why who you believe you are dictates what you can achieve. Understanding this reward machinery reveals why motivation alone so often fails. When you rely on willpower, you're working against your brain's natural tendency to seek immediate rewards. But when you engineer your environment and responses deliberately, you create a neurological pull toward achievement that requires no forcing. Consider how dopamine, often called the reward chemical, actually functions. It's released not just during pleasurable experiences, but more significantly during the anticipation of rewards. This explains why the excitement of pursuing a goal can sometimes feel more energizing than achieving it. By understanding this anticipatory nature of dopamine, you can structure your environment to create constant success cues that trigger reward anticipation. Your brain's reward system operates on what neuroscientists call dopamine scheduling, varying patterns of reinforcement that create powerful behavioral drives. Inconsistent rewards actually create stronger behavioral patterns than consistent ones. This explains why social media platforms are so addictive. The unpredictable nature of likes and comments creates a stronger dopamine response than predictable rewards. The same principle applies to achievement. When you vary the magnitude and timing of how you acknowledge progress, you create stronger neural pathways than using fixed reinforcement schedules. Small, unexpected victories can generate more powerful dopamine responses than major achievements you see coming. Your attention works like water in a garden. Whatever you focus on grows stronger neural pathways. Each time you notice and celebrate small wins, you're strengthening the neural circuits that make achievement intrinsically rewarding. Conversely, when you dismiss progress as insignificant, you're training your brain not to value incremental gains. The traditional approach of using motivation to force yourself into action fundamentally misunderstands how behavioral patterns become established in the brain. Motivation is an emotion, inherently temporary and unreliable. But engineered reward patterns create lasting neural pathways that make achievement the path of least resistance. This explains why some people seem naturally driven while others must constantly push themselves. It's not about innate differences in discipline or willpower. It's about how their reward circuits have been conditioned through patterns of attention and reinforcement. The key is to shift from relying on motivation to deliberately engineering your environment and response patterns. Instead of hoping to feel motivated, you create conditions that make success neurologically rewarding. This might mean breaking goals into smaller segments with clear completion points, varying how you celebrate progress, or structuring your environment to provide consistent achievement cues. The brain's reward system doesn't judge whether a behavior is good or bad. It simply reinforces whatever actions lead to dopamine release. By understanding this machinery, you can intentionally create reward patterns that make excellence addictive. Rather than fighting against your brain's natural tendencies, you align them with your goals. This neurological understanding transforms how you approach achievement. Instead of relying on willpower and motivation, you focus on engineering your environment and response patterns to create natural psychological pull toward desired behaviors. Success becomes less about forcing yourself to act and more about creating conditions where excellence is the natural response. The power of this approach lies in working with your brain's reward machinery rather than against it. You're not trying to overcome your neurological programming. You're redirecting it to serve your highest aspirations. When properly engineered, the same mechanisms that can create destructive addictions become the engine driving sustainable excellence. Through deliberate attention to progress, strategic reinforcement patterns, and engineered environmental cues, you create a neurological infrastructure that makes achievement intrinsically rewarding. Success becomes less about what you force yourself to do, and more about who you've trained yourself to be. By understanding and working with these fundamental neural mechanisms, you transform the very foundation of how you approach achievement. Excellence becomes not just a goal to pursue, but a natural expression of how your brain has been conditioned to function. Chapter 4. The Compound Effect of Environment. Creating spaces that make success inevitable. Your environment shapes your potential in ways far more profound than most realize. Like a chameleon unconsciously adapting to its surroundings, your mind and behaviors automatically shift to match the context you place yourself in. While most focus solely on developing stronger willpower or clearer goals, they overlook how their physical spaces, information inputs, and relationships are silently programming their potential. When you find yourself constantly falling short of your intentions, despite genuine commitment, your environment likely works against you rather than supporting your aspirations. The frustration of watching your determination fade isn't a reflection of weak character. It's the natural result of trying to fight against the invisible current of your surroundings. Environmental psychology reveals 3 key dimensions that shape your achievement potential. First, physical spaces prime your behaviors through subtle cues that bypass conscious thought. Your brain automatically adopts the behaviors most commonly performed in each location, which is why trying to work productively in spaces associated with relaxation often feels like swimming upstream. Second, your information ecosystem. The content you consume, the conversations you engage in, and the ideas you're regularly exposed to, creates the mental raw materials from which your brain constructs possibilities. When your information diet consists primarily of distraction and low-quality inputs, your mind naturally gravitates toward corresponding outputs. Third, relationship dynamics establish the behavioral norms that feel appropriate and available to you. Your brain instinctively calibrates its ambitions and actions to match the average of your 5 closest connections, making it nearly impossible to sustain behaviors that deviate dramatically from your social context. Together, these 3 dimensions create what I call environmental congruence. The degree of alignment between your surroundings and your goals. When this alignment is strong, progress feels natural and momentum builds automatically. When it's weak, every step forward requires exhausting amounts of conscious effort. Think of your environment as gravity, an invisible force that constantly influences your trajectory. You can temporarily overcome it through forceful effort, but sustainable progress comes from positioning yourself so this force works with you, rather than against you. Success scaffolding is the deliberate engineering of your surroundings to make optimal behaviors your default mode. This isn't about perfect conditions. It's about intentionally structuring your environment so it naturally pulls you toward your potential, rather than requiring constant pushing against resistance. When you understand these principles, seemingly minor environmental adjustments create dramatic shifts in your achievement trajectory, rearranging your physical space to make productive behaviors the path of least resistance. curating your information inputs to automatically elevate your thinking, and strategically restructuring your relationship dynamics to support rather than hinder your growth. These environmental optimizations make extraordinary achievement feel natural rather than forced. You might think your environment is fixed or beyond your control, but this perspective overlooks the countless small adjustments available in any situation. Even in challenging circumstances, you can create environmental pockets that support rather than sabotage your potential. The key is targeting the aspects within your influence rather than becoming overwhelmed by those you can't immediately change. Your environment shapes your actions far more powerfully than willpower alone ever could. By intentionally redesigning your surroundings, you transform the invisible forces that guide your daily choices, creating an ecosystem where excellence emerges naturally and effortlessly. Think of your environment as a current that either propels you forward or holds you back. Every object, space, and interaction either amplifies your potential or subtly drains it. The beauty of environmental design lies in its subtle power. Instead of fighting against your surroundings, you align them with your aspirations, turning your space into a silent ally that guides you toward your goals. When you thoughtfully adjust your physical spaces, digital landscape, and social circles, you build a world where extraordinary achievement becomes your default setting rather than a constant struggle. Your surroundings begin working for you instead of against you, making excellence feel as natural as breathing. This transformation goes beyond mere organization or decluttering. It's about engineering an ecosystem that magnifies your strengths and minimizes friction points that drain your energy. Each object in your space, every notification on your phone, and all the people you regularly interact with either fuel your momentum or imperceptibly drag you off course. By consciously crafting these elements, you create a slipstream that carries you toward your highest potential without the exhausting battle against perpetual resistance. Your environment becomes a powerful catalyst, automatically triggering behaviors that align with your deepest aspirations rather than your temporary impulses. Chapter 5. The Language of Winners: How Your Words Create Your Reality. Your words do more than describe your reality. They actively create it. Every phrase you use programs neural pathways that determine which opportunities you can perceive and which remain invisible to you. This isn't abstract theory. It's supported by extensive neuroscientific research showing how language shapes cognitive processing at the most fundamental level. You've likely experienced moments when situations felt completely overwhelming, only to have someone help you see them differently by describing them in new terms. That shift wasn't just emotional comfort. It was a literal rewiring of your neural networks, expanding what your brain could recognize as possible in that moment. The neuroscience of language reveals that your word choices create distinct patterns of brain activation that either expand or constrain your perceived options. When you consistently use phrases like, "I have to," versus "I choose to," or "this is impossible," versus "this is challenging," you're not just expressing different attitudes. You're physically strengthening neural pathways that determine what possibilities your brain can recognize. Consider how winners and average performers describe identical circumstances. Where one sees a problem that's blocking progress, another perceives an opportunity to develop a new solution. These aren't just different attitudes. They're fundamentally different neural frameworks that determine what action possibilities become visible to each person. Language operates through 4 key dimensions that shape your perception of reality. First, possibility framing determines whether you see situations through a lens of limitation or opportunity. The words you use literally filter your perception, highlighting either obstacles or potential paths forward. The second dimension, agency phrasing, establishes whether you experience events as happening to you or as circumstances you can influence. This shows up in subtle but crucial distinctions like I can't versus I haven't yet, or it's impossible versus I haven't found a way. Specificity, the third dimension, determines whether your brain engages in precise problem solving or remains trapped in vague generalizations. Compare everything's going wrong to this specific approach isn't working yet. One triggers helplessness while the other invites solution finding. The fourth dimension, temporal orientation, shapes whether your language keeps you mentally rehearsing past limitations or imagining future possibilities. The difference between I've always struggled with this and I'm learning how to handle this differently creates entirely different neural pathways for processing the same situation. These patterns create what neuroscientists call linguistic priming. Your habitual word choices literally pre-program your brain to either seek opportunities or confirm limitations. It's like installing different operating systems that process the same input data in fundamentally different ways. The transformative power of linguistic reframing becomes clear when you examine how language alters perception of common situations. What one person experiences as overwhelming pressure becomes intense growth opportunity through different word choices. What feels like impossible expectations transforms into expanding capabilities through linguistic shifts. Your brain responds to these linguistic patterns regardless of your conscious beliefs. Even subtle shifts from I'm trying to I'm learning, or from I should to I choose to, create immediate changes in which neural pathways activate, instantly expanding your perception of possible responses. This isn't about artificial positivity or denying challenges. It's about programming your neural networks to process information in ways that reveal more possibilities, rather than confirming limitations. Small changes in habitual phrases dramatically alter which aspects of reality your brain considers relevant and actionable. The relationship between language and perception operates like a self-fulfilling prophecy at the neural level. The words you consistently use strengthen specific neural pathways, making certain interpretations of reality more likely while others become less accessible. This creates a feedback loop where your language shapes your perception, which influences your experience, which then reinforces your language patterns. The power of this understanding lies in its immediate applicability. You don't need to change your entire vocabulary overnight. Even small adjustments to key phrases and how you describe challenging situations can create significant shifts in your perceived options. Each time you catch and redirect limiting language, you're literally rewiring your brain's filtering system to reveal more possibilities. These micro adjustments in your daily dialogue accumulate into major perceptual transformations, much like how water shapes stone, not through force, but through persistent flow. When you shift from I have to I get to, from this is impossible to this is challenging, your neural pathways begin carving new channels that illuminate previously invisible opportunities. Your brain becomes increasingly skilled at detecting potential solutions rather than confirming predetermined limitations. Chapter 6. The Competition. Illusion. Why beating others is the slowest path to success. The endless drive to outperform others seems logical on the surface. After all, isn't competition what drives excellence? Yet this common assumption contains a paradox that holds back countless strivers. The more intensely you focus on beating others, the more you limit your own potential for extraordinary achievement. You feel this tension daily, the constant pressure to measure up, to stay ahead, to prove your worth through comparison. Each success brings only momentary relief before the anxiety of maintaining your position returns. Even when you win, the satisfaction feels hollow, because there's always another competitor, another benchmark, another rung on the endless ladder of comparison. This exhausting cycle isn't just emotionally draining. It creates neurological patterns that actively constrain your capabilities. When your brain fixates on comparative performance, it triggers stress responses that impair exactly the cognitive functions needed for breakthrough achievement. Creative thinking becomes restricted, strategic planning grows myopic, and innovative solutions remain hidden behind the fog of competitive anxiety. The most successful individuals understand a counterintuitive truth. Extraordinary achievement comes not from obsessing over competition, but from transcending it entirely. They've shifted from competition-based motivation to contribution-centered achievement, focusing not on outperforming others, but on maximizing their unique value creation. This shift transforms the fundamental question from "how can I be better than others?" to "how can I contribute something only I can offer?" The neuroscience reveals why this reorientation creates superior results. Contribution focus activates brain regions associated with innovation, flow states, and expansive thinking, while competitive focus triggers restrictive, threat-based processing. Competition-based achievement suffers from four critical limitations. First is measurement distortion. Using others' performance as your metric means being confined by their limitations rather than your true potential. Second is artificial ceilings. You can only rise as high as your competitors, making their boundaries become your boundaries. Third is misaligned effort. Energy goes toward relative positioning rather than absolute progress. Fourth is motivational vulnerability. When your drive depends on external comparison, your motivation becomes fragile and inconsistent. Think of competition-focused achievement like running on a circular track. You can sprint faster and faster, expending enormous energy while making no actual forward progress. In contrast, contribution-focused achievement charts a unique path aligned with your distinct capabilities and vision. Rather than trying to run faster on someone else's track, you create your own course toward meaningful impact. This isn't about ignoring competition or pretending it doesn't exist. Rather, it's about transcending the comparative mindset to access your full creative and productive potential. In competitive contexts, contribution-focused achievers see platforms for creating value rather than battlegrounds for proving worth. They transform zero-sum games into opportunities for expanding possibilities. Neuroscience shows why this works. When you stop fixating on beating others, the brain releases its threat response patterns and accesses higher cognitive functions. Innovation flows more freely. Strategic thinking expands. Solutions emerge that were invisible through the lens of competition. You might wonder how this applies in highly competitive fields where comparative performance seems unavoidable. The key is recognizing that even there, sustainable success comes from unique value creation rather than pure competitive advantage. The most impactful leaders and highest achievers focus on expanding the game rather than just winning it. Consider how this shift would transform your current goals and challenges. Rather than measuring yourself against others' metrics, what unique contribution could you develop? Instead of trying to be better at what everyone else is doing, what distinctive value could only you create? When you orient toward contribution rather than competition, Artificial limitations fall away and new possibilities emerge. This perspective transforms not just results, but also the experience of achievement itself. Instead of the draining cycle of competitive comparison, you access the energizing flow of creative contribution. Rather than temporary wins followed by renewed anxiety, you build sustainable progress aligned with your authentic capabilities. The most extraordinary achievements in history have come not from trying to beat others, but from transcending comparative thinking to create unprecedented value. The question isn't whether you can outperform your competitors. It's whether you can contribute something so uniquely valuable that competition becomes irrelevant. When you study the true innovators and pioneers across every field, you find they weren't focused on being marginally better than their peers. They were consumed by a vision of what could be possible if they channeled their unique capabilities toward an unmet need. Their breakthroughs emerged from asking different questions entirely. Not, how can I win? But, what can I create that would make winning and losing beside the point? This shift from competitive positioning to creative contribution unlocks an entirely different level of achievement, one where your potential is limited only by your imagination and persistence, not by what others have already done. Chapter 7. The Motivation. Myth. Why passion is overrated and systems prevail. Picture two surfers approaching the ocean. The first stands on the shore waiting for the perfect wave, analyzing conditions and hesitating until everything feels exactly right. The second paddles out immediately, engaging with whatever waves come, learning and adjusting through constant interaction with the water. By day's end, who do you think has made more progress? This simple contrast illuminates one of the most pervasive myths holding back your achievement: the belief that you need to feel motivated before taking action. You've experienced this countless times, putting off important work until you feel ready, waiting for inspiration to strike before starting that crucial project, or delaying healthy habits until you're in the right headspace. The cost of this motivation dependency extends far beyond lost time. Each day you wait for the perfect emotional state reinforces a destructive pattern, teaching your brain that action requires a specific feeling state, rather than building the neural pathways that enable consistent progress regardless of mood. Neuroscience reveals a counterintuitive truth. Behavior shapes emotion far more powerfully than emotion shapes behavior. When you take action, regardless of how you feel, your brain releases neurochemicals that actually generate motivation. This action-first principle explains why waiting to feel motivated creates a perpetual trap. You're seeking an emotional state that can only reliably emerge from the very actions you're postponing. This insight transforms our understanding of sustainable achievement. Rather than trying to generate or maintain motivation, successful individuals build systems that create automatic progress independent of emotional fluctuations. They understand that consistency trumps intensity every time. Consider how this plays out neurologically. When you rely on motivation, you activate the limbic system, the emotional brain that's highly susceptible to stress, fatigue, and external circumstances. But when you build systems, you engage the basal ganglia, the habit center that can maintain consistent behavior patterns regardless of emotional state. The key components of motivation-independent systems aren't complex, but they require a fundamental shift in approach. Instead of waiting for inspiration to strike, you identify the smallest possible action that maintains momentum, what I call the minimal viable action, MVA. This might be writing one sentence, doing one push-up, or making one sales call. The specific action matters less than its consistency. These MVAs get paired with clear implementation triggers. environmental cues that prompt automatic behavior without requiring decision-making. Rather than relying on willpower or motivation, you create situations that naturally lead to action. A laptop open to a blank document first thing in the morning. Exercise clothes laid out beside your bed. A scheduled call block that starts as soon as you arrive at work. The third critical element is visible progress tracking, not as a tool for judgment, but as a mechanism for building momentum. When you can see your consistent action, regardless of how small, it creates a psychological pull toward continuation. This isn't about measuring outcomes, but rather acknowledging the power of sustained engagement. Finally, strategic accountability provides the external structure that ensures follow-through when internal resistance arises. This isn't about punishment or shame, but rather creating supportive environments that make action the path of least resistance. Together, these components form what I call motivation-independent progress, the ability to maintain momentum regardless of emotional fluctuations. Think of motivation like a fire that requires constant feeding and remains vulnerable to conditions. In contrast, systems function like an electric generator, producing reliable energy regardless of external circumstances. This shift from motivation dependency to systems-based achievement revolutionizes how you approach goals. Instead of trying to push yourself into action through willpower or waiting for inspiration, you create structures that generate automatic progress. When you feel energized, these systems allow you to capitalize on that motivation. When you don't, they ensure you maintain momentum anyway. The most profound aspect of this approach is how it transforms the relationship between action and passion. Rather than passion driving action, consistent action through systems actually generates genuine passion. This explains why waiting to feel passionate about a goal often leads to permanent inaction, while taking systematic action creates authentic enthusiasm over time. When you build reliable systems, you tap into a deeper truth about human psychology. Passion doesn't precede achievement, it emerges from it. Each small win your systems generate creates microbursts of satisfaction that compound into genuine excitement. Your brain begins associating the activity with reward, transforming what may have started as neutral or even unpleasant tasks into sources of anticipation and enthusiasm. This biological feedback loop makes passion inevitable rather than prerequisite. Chapter 8. The Focus Fallacy. Achieving more by doing less. The relentless pursuit of more often leads to achieving less, a paradox that defies conventional wisdom yet plays out repeatedly in the lives of ambitious strivers. You push yourself to take on additional projects, expand your commitments, and pack every moment with activity, believing that more effort must equal more results. Yet despite your increasing busyness, meaningful progress remains elusive. This experience is emotionally and physically draining. You end each day exhausted, checking off countless tasks, while sensing that the truly important goals remain just out of reach. The constant motion creates an illusion of productivity that masks a deeper truth. Activity does not equal achievement. Most people stay trapped in what I call motion activities, tasks that consume time and energy but don't create significant forward momentum. These activities feel productive at the moment because they allow you to check boxes and clear small items from your list. Yet they often serve as sophisticated forms of procrastination, keeping you busy while the needle of meaningful progress barely moves. Your brain is actually wired to prefer these motion activities over high-leverage actions. The psychological reward of completing small tasks provides an immediate hit of satisfaction, while the uncertainty and complexity of more important work triggers subconscious resistance. This natural tendency toward motion over impact explains why many people work harder every year without seeing proportional results. The solution lies in understanding the principle of concentrated impact, the exponential increase in results that occurs when you narrow your focus to fewer but more meaningful activities. This isn't just about working smarter. It's about fundamentally redefining your relationship with achievement. Consider the mathematical reality of the 90-10 rule of achievement. Approximately 90% of significant outcomes are driven by just 10% of activities. This distribution appears across nearly every domain of accomplishment. Yet most people continue spreading their energy evenly across all tasks as if they carried equal weight. When you water a garden with a sprinkler, you create shallow growth everywhere. But when you concentrate that same water through a targeted hose, you enable breakthrough growth in specific areas. Your time and energy work the same way. Diffused effort creates mediocre results across many areas, while concentrated focus enables extraordinary achievement in what matters most. The path to exponential results paradoxically requires doing less, not more. By eliminating low-value activities that consume your resources, you create space for the deep work that drives meaningful progress. This isn't about becoming more productive, it's about becoming more selective. The cultural pressure to do it all often creates resistance to this strategic elimination. The fear of missing out, FOMO, drives many to maintain commitments that drain energy from more important pursuits. But this mindset fundamentally misunderstands the mathematics of achievement. By trying to keep all options open, you guarantee mediocrity across the board. Real achievement requires the courage to disappoint people in small ways in service of making a bigger impact where it truly matters. Every yes to a low-value activity becomes an implicit no to something more important. The most successful individuals aren't those who figure out how to do everything. They're those who get brutally clear about what few things matter most. The path to breakthrough results requires identifying and systematically eliminating the motion activities that create the illusion of progress while consuming resources needed for meaningful achievement. This isn't about working harder or becoming more efficient at juggling multiple priorities. It's about having the wisdom and discipline to do less, but more important work. The most valuable productivity tool isn't a new technique for getting more done. It's a razor-sharp understanding of what few activities actually drive transformative results. By redirecting your finite energy from motion to impact, you create the space for exponential achievement in what matters most. This shift transcends traditional productivity. It's about fundamentally redefining your relationship with time and energy. When you focus your efforts on the vital few actions that create breakthrough outcomes, you tap into a hidden multiplier effect. Each hour invested in high-impact work compounds in value, while time spent on peripheral activities dissolves into the ether of missed opportunities. Your potential for extraordinary achievement exists not in doing more things, but in bringing unprecedented focus to the essential. Chapter 9. The Failure Advantage: Leveraging Setbacks as Strategic Assets. What if failure isn't the opposite of success, but actually its prerequisite? This question challenges everything you've been conditioned to believe about achievement and setbacks. The visceral sting of failure, that crushing weight in your chest, the shame that makes you want to hide, the voice whispering that you're not good enough. These experiences shape your relationship with risk and achievement in profound ways. When you encounter failure, your brain processes it as a threat, triggering the same neurological responses as physical danger. This biological reality explains why setbacks often feel devastating rather than instructive. Your amygdala floods your system with stress hormones, impairing the very cognitive functions you need for learning and growth. But this automatic response can be rewired through a fundamental shift in how you perceive and process failure. Neuroscience reveals something remarkable. Your interpretation of failure, not the failure itself, determines whether it becomes a catalyst for growth or a reason to retreat. Winners don't experience less fear or disappointment when facing setbacks. They've simply developed a different relationship with these experiences through what we call strategic failure. Strategic failure transforms setbacks from emotional judgments about your capabilities into neutral data points that refine your approach. This shift occurs through understanding and leveraging four critical dimensions. Speed of iteration determines how quickly you move through learning cycles. While most people try to minimize failure by moving cautiously, strategic failure accelerates progress by increasing the frequency of attempts. Every setback becomes an opportunity to gather data and refine your approach. Specificity involves designing your attempts to yield precise information. Rather than treating failure as a broad judgment of capability, strategic failure isolates variables to understand exactly what's working and what isn't. This targeted approach transforms overwhelming setbacks into clear adjustment points. Recovery focuses on minimizing downtime between attempts. The gap between failure and your next attempt often determines whether setbacks become terminal or transformational. Strategic failure emphasizes rapid re-engagement, preventing the crystallization of limiting beliefs. Extraction involves systematic learning from each experience. While most people try to forget failures as quickly as possible, strategic failure creates structured processes for capturing insights that inform future attempts. This transforms setbacks from empty suffering into valuable education. Your brain's natural tendency is to generalize failure, allowing single setbacks to create broad limitations on future action. Strategic failure counters this by maintaining rigid distinctions between outcomes and identity. A failed attempt becomes a successful data collection, reframing the entire experience from threat to opportunity. The conventional approach to failure resembles a hiker avoiding all challenging terrain, sticking to well-worn paths even when they lead away from the destination. Strategic failure is like a climber who uses obstacles as handholds, transforming what others avoid into advantages that accelerate progress. This shift requires more than positive thinking. It demands a fundamental reconstruction of how you process and respond to setbacks. The traditional fear-based approach treats failure as something to be avoided at all costs, creating hesitation that actually increases the likelihood of negative outcomes. Strategic failure embraces setbacks as essential feedback, removing the emotional charge that typically makes failure so devastating. Success and failure aren't opposites. They're partners in an iterative process of growth. Every significant breakthrough in human history emerged through countless setbacks that were reframed as stepping stones rather than stopping points. Your capacity for achievement expands dramatically when you stop trying to avoid failure and start trying to fail strategically. This doesn't mean failure won't feel uncomfortable. It means you'll develop the capacity to act powerfully despite that discomfort, knowing that every setback brings you closer to breakthrough. When you truly understand that failure isn't happening to you but for you, your relationship with risk and achievement transforms permanently. The initial sting of setbacks may remain, but it becomes a signal of growth rather than a warning to retreat. Your nervous system learns to interpret that familiar tension not as a threat, but as confirmation that you're pushing into new territory, where breakthrough becomes possible. This fundamental shift in perception turns what once felt like punishment into clear feedback, guiding you toward mastery. You start recognizing these moments of discomfort as essential waypoints on your journey, much like a muscle must experience the burn of resistance to grow stronger. The anxiety that once paralyzed you transforms into an energizing force, a reliable compass pointing toward your next evolution. Your relationship with difficulty undergoes a profound rewiring. Instead of bracing against it, you lean into it, knowing that each moment of resistance shapes you into someone more capable than before. Chapter 10. The Discomfort Threshold. Expanding your capacity for productive struggle. Your relationship with discomfort fundamentally determines your capacity for achievement. Just as muscles require resistance to grow stronger, your potential expands only when you push against the boundaries of what feels comfortable. This biological reality extends far beyond physical development. It governs every aspect of human growth and achievement. The space between comfort and overwhelm, what we call the growth zone, represents the narrow band where maximum development occurs. Yet our nervous systems are exquisitely designed to avoid this space, steering us toward comfort, even when that comfort ensures stagnation. This isn't a character flaw or lack of motivation. It's a natural evolutionary response designed to conserve energy and avoid potential threats. Understanding the neuroscience of adaptive stress reveals why this instinct, while natural, becomes the invisible ceiling on our achievement. When you encounter calibrated challenges, those that push you without breaking you, your brain literally rewires itself, creating new neural pathways that expand your capabilities. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, when properly dosed, act as growth agents that strengthen neural connections and enhance learning. But this process only works when you remain in contact with the discomfort rather than retreating from it. The development of discomfort capacity operates through four critical dimensions that determine your ability to leverage stress for growth rather than be diminished by it. Duration represents your ability to sustain contact with challenging states without seeking immediate relief. This isn't about enduring misery, but about extending your window of tolerance for growth-producing stress. Intensity involves calibrating the degree of challenge to create optimal adaptation without overwhelming your systems. Recovery focuses on strategic renewal between stressors, allowing integration of growth while preventing accumulative strain. Attribution determines how you interpret difficult experiences, whether you process them as threats to avoid or opportunities to expand. Winners aren't individuals who feel less discomfort. They've simply developed greater capacity to function effectively while experiencing it. This distinction proves crucial. The goal isn't to eliminate discomfort, but to expand your ability to operate powerfully within it. Discomfort tolerance operates as a trainable skill rather than an innate trait, responding to progressive exposure just like any other capability. Think of your capacity for discomfort like the banks of a river. When the banks are narrow, even a small increase in water volume creates flooding. But as you gradually widen those banks, the same river can handle much greater flow without becoming overwhelming. Similarly, as you expand your discomfort capacity, challenges that once seemed overwhelming become manageable, not because they're less intense, but because your ability to handle intensity has grown. This understanding transforms how you approach growth opportunities. Rather than organizing your life around comfort and trying to squeeze in growth where it feels safe, you begin deliberately seeking calibrated challenges that expand your capabilities. The key lies in making this process strategic rather than masochistic, choosing discomfort that develops specific capacities rather than simply embracing struggle for its own sake. Your brain instinctively categorizes discomfort as threatening, triggering protective responses that limit your engagement with growth opportunities. But by systematically reframing these experiences as developmental rather than dangerous, you can override these automatic reactions. This doesn't require eliminating the fear or resistance. It simply involves developing the capacity to act effectively in their presence. The biochemistry of growth requires stress. Every adaptation, whether physical, mental, or emotional, occurs as a response to challenging conditions. Comfort, while pleasant, becomes quicksand for potential. The more you organize your life around avoiding discomfort, the more you ensure your capabilities remain fixed rather than expanding. This principle reveals why identical opportunities produce dramatically different results for different individuals. The determining factor isn't intelligence, talent, or even effort. It's capacity to remain engaged and effective under challenging conditions. Those who develop this capacity systematically expose themselves to progressive challenges, gradually expanding their comfort zone rather than treating it as a fixed boundary to be protected. The most profound achievements in human history have come not from those who felt no fear or discomfort, but from those who developed the capacity to function powerfully while experiencing these natural responses to challenge. They understood that discomfort often serves as a compass pointing toward growth opportunities rather than a warning to retreat. Your instincts may urge you to avoid situations that trigger uncertainty or anxiety, but this protective impulse becomes the very force that prevents your evolution. The greatest innovators, leaders, and pioneers throughout time maintained their effectiveness not because they were immune to doubt or distress, but because they recognized these sensations as markers of expansion rather than signals of danger. When you reframe your relationship with discomfort, seeing it as feedback rather than failure, you unlock access to capabilities that remain forever dormant in those who organize their lives around comfort. Chapter 11. The Consistency Compound. Small Actions. Extraordinary Results. Your relationship with consistency holds the key to extraordinary achievement. The mathematics reveal a stunning truth. Improving by just 1% each day compounds to a 37.78 times increase over a year. Yet your mind struggles to grasp this reality because human psychology naturally undervalues small, consistent actions in favor of dramatic gestures. When you make minor improvements, your brain's reward systems often fail to register meaningful progress. The changes feel insignificant, even disappointing. This disconnection between effort and perceived results leads many to abandon sustainable progress in favor of unsustainable intensity. You try to make up for inconsistency through periodic bursts of extreme effort, but this approach inevitably fails because it fights against fundamental principles of neural adaptation and behavioral change. Understanding the science of compound growth reveals why consistency trumps intensity. Your brain physically rewires itself through repeated actions, not occasional extremes. Each time you perform a behavior, you strengthen specific neural pathways. Small actions maintained consistently create robust neural networks that make behaviors increasingly automatic. In contrast, sporadic intense efforts fail to create lasting neural adaptation, requiring you to essentially start over each time. The power of consistency extends beyond pure mathematics into the realm of identity reinforcement. Every time you follow through on a commitment, no matter how small, you strengthen your self-image as someone who does what they say they'll do. This identity level change creates a powerful feedback loop where consistent action becomes increasingly natural because it aligns with who you believe yourself to be. The minimum effective consistency represents the smallest sustainable action that maintains forward momentum. Rather than focusing on optimal conditions, you must identify the baseline behavior you can execute regardless of circumstances. This might mean reading one page instead of a chapter, doing one push-up instead of 20, or writing one paragraph instead of several chapters. While these actions may seem insignificantly small, they serve a crucial function in maintaining the consistency that enables compound growth. Implementation triggers create the environmental and contextual cues that prompt automatic behavior. By linking your minimum effective consistency to specific triggers, you bypass the need for conscious decision-making. The trigger itself initiates the behavior, dramatically reducing the willpower required for follow-through. This automation of positive behaviors represents one of the most powerful applications of behavioral psychology to achievement. Progress tracking systems make incremental growth visible, addressing the natural difficulty your brain has in recognizing small improvements. By maintaining clear records of consistent action, you create concrete evidence that counters the subjective feeling that small efforts don't matter. This visibility helps sustain motivation during periods when progress feels slow or intangible. Recovery protocols acknowledge the reality that perfect consistency is neither possible nor necessary. By having predetermined strategies for maintaining minimum effective consistency during challenging periods, you prevent temporary disruptions from becoming permanent derailments. This approach transforms consistency from a rigid, unsustainable standard into a flexible, maintainable practice. The state of consistency and momentum emerges when maintaining your chosen behaviors requires less energy than abandoning them. Initially, consistent action demands conscious effort and willpower. However, as neural pathways strengthen and habits form, these same actions begin to feel natural and automatic. The effort required to maintain consistency decreases, while the discomfort of inconsistency increases. The compound effect of consistency creates exponential rather than linear progress. Each consistent action builds upon previous efforts, creating accelerating returns that become increasingly visible over time. This principle applies universally across physical, mental, and professional domains. Whether developing skills, building relationships, or growing resources, consistency acts as a fundamental multiplier of results. Your relationship with time itself transforms through the lens of consistency. Rather than seeking immediate dramatic results, you learn to trust in the inevitable power of compound growth. This shift from immediate gratification to long-term perspective represents one of the most profound changes successful individuals make in their approach to achievement. The traditional cycle of inconsistency, where periodic intense efforts alternate with periods of inaction, creates a pattern of starting over repeatedly. This exhausting approach fails to capitalize on compound growth, as progress gained during active periods dissipates during inactive ones. In contrast, maintaining smaller but consistent actions creates sustainable momentum that builds upon itself over time. Your body, mind, and habits respond far more powerfully to steady, reliable input than to sporadic bursts of intensity. The illusion that you can compensate for long gaps with occasional heroic efforts keeps you trapped in a frustrating loop of temporary gains and inevitable backsliding. Breaking free requires accepting a fundamental truth. Sustainable progress flows from actions you can maintain day after day. not from periodic acts of willpower that leave you depleted. Chapter 12. The Achievement. Accelerator. Leveraging strategic stress and recovery. Your understanding of peak performance likely centers on a fundamental misconception: the belief that sustained, unrelenting effort is the path to extraordinary achievement. This intuitive but flawed assumption leads countless dedicated individuals toward burnout rather than breakthrough, despite their sincere commitment to excellence. The highest performers across every domain, from elite athletes to groundbreaking innovators, share a counterintuitive secret. They don't achieve more by working longer or pushing harder continuously. Instead, they master the rhythm of strategic oscillation between intense focus and deliberate recovery. This pattern mirrors the most fundamental processes of life itself, from the beating of your heart to the cycles of your breath. The science of human performance reveals an unchangeable truth. Your body and mind operate according to natural rhythmic cycles, not linear continuous output. Attempting to maintain constant effort fights against your fundamental biology. The result is diminishing returns, increasing errors, and eventual systemic breakdown. Consider the profound implications of your ultradian rhythm, the natural 90 to 120-minute cycles of peak capacity, followed by necessary recovery that govern your cognitive function. When you align with these cycles rather than fight them, you tap into periods of heightened focus, creativity, and mental acuity that far exceed what's possible through sustained effort. Strategic oscillation represents the intentional alignment of your work patterns with these natural cycles. Rather than attempting to maintain a constant, moderate effort, you learn to fully engage during periods of intensity, and then truly disengage for recovery. This creates a multiplicative effect where each cycle builds upon the last, rather than the diminishing returns of continuous strain. The key dimensions of performance rhythms start with work-rest ratios. Research demonstrates that 90-minute focused sessions followed by 15 to 20-minute recovery periods optimize cognitive function. This pattern allows for multiple peak performance cycles throughout the day, instead of the steady decline that comes from pushing through natural recovery points. Intensity calibration requires matching your effort level to your current capacity. This varies not just daily, but throughout each day. By tracking your energy patterns and adjusting your task selection accordingly, you transform natural fluctuations from obstacles into opportunities for enhanced productivity. Recovery quality proves equally crucial as work intensity. Not all forms of rest actually restore your resources. Many common break activities, like scrolling social media or answering emails, actually deplete rather than replenish your energy. True recovery requires activities that allow complete mental and physical disengagement. The synchronization principle extends beyond daily rhythms to encompass weekly, monthly, and annual cycles. Just as farmers understand the seasons for planting and harvest, you must learn to recognize and align with your larger performance patterns. This prevents the common trap of fighting against natural low periods instead of using them strategically for deeper renewal. The most vivid example of strategic oscillation's power comes from elite athletics, where science has conclusively shown that the greatest gains in strength and skill occur not during training sessions, but in the recovery periods between them. This principle applies equally to cognitive and creative work. Your brain, like your muscles, requires stress to grow stronger, but it's during recovery that the actual strengthening occurs. This reality forces a profound reconsideration of how you approach achievement. The old paradigm of powering through fatigue signals now reveals itself as fundamentally counterproductive. Those signals aren't obstacles to overcome, but critical feedback mechanisms designed to protect and optimize your performance capacity. The actual path to sustained high performance requires developing your capacity to fully engage and fully disengage. Most people never achieve either state, living in a perpetual gray zone of partial engagement and incomplete recovery. By mastering strategic oscillation, you create the conditions for what athletes call supercompensation, where each stress recovery cycle builds greater capacity than before. Implementing this approach requires overcoming deep cultural conditioning that equates constant activity with virtue and rest with weakness. Yet the evidence is clear. Those who master the rhythm of strategic oscillation consistently outperform those who rely on continuous effort. The key lies in recognizing that recovery isn't a sign of weakness, but rather a crucial investment in future performance. The most successful individuals understand this paradox. Going full out becomes sustainable only when balanced with going full off. This pattern creates an upward spiral where each engaged period becomes more productive because it's supported by genuine renewal. The result isn't just better performance, but also greater sustainability and deeper satisfaction in the achievement process. Chapter 13. The Emotional Mastery. Matrix. Transforming feelings into fuel. Emotions hold extraordinary power, not just to influence how we feel, but to fundamentally shape what we achieve. Yet most approaches to success treat emotions as obstacles to overcome rather than fuel to harness. This misunderstanding leads many to waste tremendous energy fighting natural feelings instead of learning to direct them productively. The key insight that transforms emotional mastery is understanding that no emotion is inherently positive or negative. Each contains specific forms of energy that can serve or sabotage your progress, depending on how you relate to it. Fear sharpens focus and heightens awareness when properly channeled. Anger provides decisive energy for breaking through barriers. Even seemingly limiting emotions like uncertainty can fuel creativity and exploration when approached skillfully. This isn't merely a philosophical perspective. It's grounded in the neurochemistry of emotional states. When you experience fear, your body releases norepinephrine and cortisol, creating heightened alertness and accelerated reaction time. Anger triggers adrenaline and testosterone, providing explosive energy for decisive action. The key is learning to work with these natural chemical cascades rather than against them. The emotional alchemy framework provides a systematic approach to transforming limiting emotions into achievement fuel. The process begins with awareness, developing the capacity to recognize emotional states as they arise without being consumed by them. This creates space to consciously choose how to direct the energy rather than reacting unconsciously. The next element is interpretation, examining the stories and meaning you attach to different feelings. The same physiological state of activation can be interpreted as either anxiety or excitement depending on the narrative you apply. Learning to consciously shape these interpretations allows you to access the productive potential in any emotion. Direction involves identifying specific channels for emotional energy that serve your objectives. Rather than trying to suppress or eliminate challenging feelings, you learn to redirect their force toward constructive outcomes. The uncertainty that could paralyze action becomes fuel for exploration and creativity. The frustration that might trigger giving up gets channeled into determined problem solving. The final component is cultivation, developing the ability to intentionally generate useful emotional states. Just as athletes learn to access performance-enhancing mental states on demand, you can build the capacity to call forth specific emotional energies when needed. Think of emotions as weather patterns. They arise naturally and contain tremendous force. You can't control their appearance, but you can learn to harness their energy regardless of their nature. A skilled sailor doesn't wait for perfect conditions, but learns to utilize whatever winds arise to move toward their destination. The process isn't about achieving some idealized state of perpetual positivity that's neither realistic nor desirable. Every emotion exists for a reason and contains specific forms of energy useful for different situations. Fear heightens awareness and focus, crucial for peak performance in challenging conditions. Anger provides decisive energy for breaking through barriers. Disappointment refines strategy and approach. Uncertainty fuels exploration and creativity. The key is developing greater capacity to work with the full spectrum of emotion rather than being limited to conventionally positive states. This requires moving beyond simplistic labels of good and bad feelings to understand the unique potential in each state. Common emotional traps like suppression and indulgence create their own problems. Suppressing emotions wastes energy and resistance and cuts you off from their potential power. Indulging emotions by acting them out unconsciously squanders their force while often creating new obstacles. The skillful middle path involves acknowledging emotions fully while choosing consciously how to direct their energy. Your emotional patterns contain tremendous untapped potential. Learning to identify and redirect these patterns toward productive outcomes literally gives you access to new forms of power. Rather than being drained by managing difficult feelings, you can convert their energy into fuel for achievement. The path forward isn't about eliminating emotional challenges, but developing greater capacity to utilize them effectively. This transforms your relationship with the full spectrum of human feeling from a source of limitation into a catalyst for extraordinary results. This mastery becomes especially crucial during periods of growth and achievement. The pursuit of ambitious goals inevitably triggers intense emotions: fear, doubt, frustration, uncertainty. Learning to work with, rather than against these natural responses allows you to maintain momentum where others become derailed. The shift from resisting emotions to leveraging them strategically changes everything. Instead of wasting energy fighting feelings, you learn to direct their force toward your objectives. This creates a fundamental advantage, accessing forms of power that remain unavailable to those trapped in conventional emotional relationships. The process begins with a simple but profound shift in how you relate to emotions. Rather than judging them as positive or negative, start viewing them as different forms of energy available for productive use. This opens up new possibilities for achievement by expanding your capacity to operate effectively across the full spectrum of human feeling. Chapter 14. The Decision. Architecture. Designing choices that lead to success. Your decision environment shapes your destiny far more powerfully than willpower or motivation ever could. Research in behavioral economics and cognitive psychology has consistently demonstrated that subtle changes in how choices are structured can create dramatic shifts in behavior, often without people even realizing what's influencing their decisions. Consider how many of your daily choices are actually conscious, deliberate decisions versus automatic responses to your environment. Studies show that over 40% of our daily actions aren't decisions at all, but rather habits triggered by environmental cues. This reality becomes particularly crucial when examining why some people consistently make choices that align with their goals, while others struggle, despite having similar levels of motivation and knowledge. The science of choice architecture reveals that our brains follow the path of least resistance by default. This isn't a character flaw. It's an evolutionary feature designed to conserve mental energy. Understanding this fundamental aspect of human psychology explains why relying on willpower alone so often fails. When your choice environment works against you, each decision requires conscious effort to override your brain's natural tendency toward the easiest option. What truly separates consistent achievers from occasional strivers isn't superior willpower. It's superior choice architecture. Winners learn to design their decision environments so that optimal choices become the path of least resistance. This shift from fighting against your brain's natural tendencies to working with them transforms the entire experience of achievement. The 4 dimensions of decision environment optimization provide a comprehensive framework for restructuring your choice context. First, option visibility determines what choices naturally catch your attention. Your brain can only choose from options it notices, which is why placing healthy snacks at eye level while hiding less healthy alternatives in opaque containers can dramatically impact eating habits without requiring willpower. Second, friction engineering involves strategically adjusting the effort required for different choices. Every additional step or moment of friction reduces the likelihood of a behavior occurring. This explains why placing your gym clothes by your bed makes morning workouts more likely, while requiring 3 clicks to access social media reduces mindless scrolling. Third, decision timing recognizes that our capacity for quality decisions fluctuates throughout the day. Research shows that judges make significantly more lenient decisions after food breaks, demonstrating how timing impacts even highly trained professionals. Planning important choices during your peak mental hours, while automating or eliminating decisions during low-energy periods optimizes your overall decision quality. Fourth, default selection leverages our tendency to stick with preset options. Studies show that organ donation rates are over 90% in countries where it's the default choice versus under 15% where people must actively opt in. Applying this principle, winners create default structures that automatically move them toward their goals unless they actively choose otherwise. The concept of choice flow emerges when these dimensions align, creating an environment where desired behaviors feel natural and effortless, while counterproductive choices require conscious effort. This reversal of the typical friction pattern explains why some people seem to effortlessly maintain habits that others struggle to establish. Think of your decision environment like a river current. Swimming upstream requires constant effort and leads to eventual exhaustion, no matter how strong your willpower. But when you engineer your environment effectively, the current naturally carries you toward your goals. Small adjustments in the flow create massive differences in where you end up. The power of choice architecture becomes particularly evident when examining common failure patterns. Most people attempt to overcome poor choice structures through sheer force of will. This works temporarily, but inevitably leads to decision fatigue and reversion to whatever behavior their environment naturally encourages. Instead of trying to overpower your environment, success comes from intelligently redesigning it. This isn't about eliminating choice. It's about structuring choices so that optimal decisions become your default mode of operation. When right choices feel easier than wrong ones, sustainable progress becomes inevitable rather than exhausting. By shifting your focus from willpower to design, you transform the invisible forces that shape your daily decisions. A well-engineered environment quietly guides you toward excellence, making positive choices feel natural and effortless. The energy you once spent fighting against your surroundings now flows into meaningful progress, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of achievement. Your environment becomes an ally rather than an adversary, propelling you forward with its own momentum. Chapter 15. The Relationship Accelerator. Leveraging Connections for Exponential Growth. Your relationships shape your destiny far more profoundly than your talents, strategies, or efforts. Research consistently demonstrates that the quality and nature of your social connections predict achievement outcomes more reliably than IQ, education, or even deliberate practice. This reality challenges the common myth of the self-made individual, revealing instead that extraordinary achievement emerges from strategic relationship ecosystems. The psychological impact of your social connections runs deeper than most realize. Studies in social neuroscience have shown that your brain literally adapts to mirror the cognitive patterns, emotional responses, and behavioral tendencies of those you regularly interact with. This neurological synchronization occurs automatically, beyond conscious awareness, which explains why you may find yourself unconsciously adopting the limitations, fears, and self-doubts of those around you, even when you consciously reject these patterns. Understanding this profound social influence reveals why maintaining comfortable but limiting relationships often creates an invisible ceiling on your potential. Your brain's natural tendency to synchronize with familiar connections means that relationships which feel supportive can actually be constraining your growth if they reinforce outdated patterns or limited perspectives. The science of achievement networks demonstrates that specific types of relationships create distinct neurological and behavioral effects. Aspirational connections, those operating at levels you wish to reach, activate brain regions associated with expanded possibility perception and enhanced problem-solving capability. Regular exposure to these individuals literally rewires your neural networks to recognize opportunities you previously couldn't perceive. Accountability partnerships trigger increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive center, strengthening your capacity for consistent action and strategic decision-making. These relationships create external commitment structures that bypass the limitations of willpower, making follow-through more automatic and sustainable. Skill accelerators, individuals who have mastered capabilities you're developing, activate mirror neuron systems that accelerate learning through unconscious pattern recognition. Regular interaction with these connections creates rapid skill transfer that transcends traditional learning approaches. Challenge providers serve as essential catalysts for growth by preventing the natural tendency toward comfort and complacency. These relationships activate healthy stress responses that drive adaptation and capability expansion, ensuring continued progress rather than plateau. Belief reinforcers play a crucial role during inevitable periods of difficulty by maintaining activation of brain regions associated with confidence and possibility thinking when circumstances might otherwise trigger doubt and retreat. These connections provide essential psychological stability that sustains momentum through obstacles. The combined effect of these strategically cultivated relationships creates what research terms social synergy, a phenomenon where the interaction between connections generates momentum and opportunities beyond what any individual relationship could provide. This synergistic effect explains why achievement often accelerates dramatically when social networks are intentionally optimized. The neuroscience of social networks reveals that your brain processes relationship influences through multiple parallel pathways, creating combined effects more powerful than conscious intention or individual effort. This multiplied impact means that optimizing your relationship portfolio often yields better results than increasing personal effort or developing new skills. When you understand these social dynamics, you recognize that strategic relationship cultivation isn't networking. It's the intentional engineering of an achievement ecosystem that naturally pulls you toward your highest potential. This shift from isolated striving to leveraged growth through connections transforms both the speed and sustainability of progress. The relationship portfolio required for extraordinary achievement contains specific proportions of each connection type, calibrated to your current development stage and aspirations. This portfolio must be actively managed and regularly rebalanced as you evolve, ensuring your social ecosystem continues providing appropriate support and challenge. Your brain's neuroplasticity, its ability to rewire itself based on experience, means that every interaction either reinforces existing patterns or creates new possibilities. This reality makes relationship choices among the most consequential decisions affecting your achievement trajectory. When you recognize relationships as the fundamental infrastructure of achievement rather than mere support systems, you understand why strategic connection cultivation often yields better returns than developing new capabilities or increasing effort. Your social environment creates the platform that determines how effectively you can deploy whatever other resources you possess. Success becomes exponentially more accessible when you stop trying to power personal growth through isolated effort and instead learn to harness the naturally occurring energy of strategic relationships. This shift from exhausting self-sufficiency to leveraged connection transforms achievement from a draining push to an energizing pull. Chapter 16: The Adversity. Advantage: transforming obstacles into opportunities. Your greatest advantages often hide within your most daunting challenges. While our natural response to adversity typically involves resistance and retreat, understanding the profound transformative potential of obstacles reveals an entirely different paradigm of achievement. Research in post-traumatic growth and psychological resilience demonstrates that extraordinary capabilities emerge specifically because of, not in spite of, significant challenges. When you encounter seemingly insurmountable barriers, your brain instinctively categorizes them as threats to be avoided. This protective response, while natural, often prevents you from recognizing the unique opportunities embedded within difficult circumstances. Studies in neuroplasticity reveal that our brains develop new neural pathways and enhanced capabilities specifically in response to stressors that push us beyond our current limits. The strategic adversity framework transforms this innate threat response into a catalyst for breakthrough achievement. Rather than viewing obstacles as unfortunate setbacks, this approach recognizes them as essential drivers of extraordinary development. Research shows that individuals who master this perspective consistently outperform those who face fewer challenges, specifically because adversity creates capabilities that comfort never could. Consider how pressure transforms coal into diamonds, a process that requires intense stress to create something of extraordinary value. Similarly, your challenges contain the raw material for exceptional achievement, but only when you learn to work with rather than against the pressure they create. The science of anti-fragility, systems that get stronger when stressed, provides biological evidence for this principle. Your muscles grow specifically because of resistance, your immune system strengthens through exposure to pathogens, and your psychological resilience develops through successfully navigating difficulties. This pattern reveals a fundamental truth. Growth requires resistance. Mastering strategic adversity involves four critical dimensions. First, perspective transformation, consciously reframing obstacles from threats into growth catalysts. Second, resource extraction, identifying and leveraging the unique advantages each challenge creates. Third, strategic application, deploying these advantages to accelerate rather than inhibit progress. Fourth, identity integration, incorporating these experiences into an empowered self-concept that seeks out rather than avoids challenge. Winners aren't those who face fewer obstacles. They're individuals who respond to challenges differently. Rather than being diminished by adversity, they allow it to forge them into something stronger. This isn't about positive thinking or denying difficulty. It's about extracting maximum value from inevitable challenges. Like a sailboat using headwinds to power forward, mastery of strategic adversity allows you to harness forces that stop others. The same wind that halts those who fight against it becomes a powerful driver for those who understand how to position their sails. Your obstacles contain similar potential energy, either working against you or propelling you forward depending on your response. The practical application requires shifting from a victim-oriented to an advantage-oriented mindset. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the strategic question becomes, "How is this happening for me?" This isn't semantic wordplay. It's a fundamental reorientation that activates different neural pathways and opens new possibilities. When facing discouragement or overwhelm, remember that these emotional responses don't indicate the value of the challenge, only your current relationship with it. The adversity reframing protocol transforms this relationship through systematic advantage extraction. First, clearly identify the specific challenge. Then, exhaustively list every potential advantage it creates. New skills forced to develop, relationships strengthened through shared difficulty, opportunities that exist only because of this obstacle. Strategic adversity mastery ultimately creates individuals who thrive in conditions that defeat others. Rather than waiting for perfect circumstances, they actively seek challenges that will forge them into something stronger. This capacity transforms obstacles from barriers into catalysts, revealing their true nature as disguised opportunities for extraordinary achievement. The key lies not in avoiding adversity, but in developing your capacity to extract advantage from it. Every obstacle contains embedded opportunities, resources, insights, and capabilities that become available specifically because of the challenge. Your task is not to wish for easier challenges, but to develop greater capacity to recognize and leverage the advantages within them. This mindset shift transforms your entire relationship with difficulty. Instead of seeing obstacles as unwelcome disruptions, you begin to view them as accelerants to your growth. Each challenge becomes a laboratory for developing new strengths, a forge where your character is tempered into something more resilient. The most successful individuals don't stumble upon easier paths. They build themselves into people capable of transforming any path into an avenue for achievement. When you stop resisting what stands in your way and start mining it for hidden value, you unlock a form of alchemy that turns your greatest struggles into your most powerful assets. Chapter 17. The Clarity Catalyst, Defining Success on Your Own Terms. Success that feels hollow is no success at all. This paradox confronts countless high achievers who reach society's benchmarks of accomplishment only to discover an inexplicable emptiness awaiting them at the summit. You've likely experienced this disconnect yourself, that unsettling realization that checking all the conventional boxes of achievement hasn't delivered the fulfillment you anticipated. The psychology behind this phenomenon reveals a critical truth. External success without internal alignment creates a state of success incongruence, where outward accomplishments actively conflict with inner values rather than reinforcing them. Research in positive psychology demonstrates that lasting achievement requires consonance between actions and authentic priorities, not just the accumulation of socially sanctioned gold stars. This misalignment manifests in subtle but corrosive ways. The promotion that provides status but constrains impact. The prestigious role that impresses others but drains your energy. The financial goals reached at the cost of key relationships. The longer you pursue success defined by others, the wider this gulf between external validation and internal fulfillment grows. The concept of success congruence offers a profound shift in how we approach achievement. Rather than adopting standardized metrics, it demands clarifying what genuine success means through your unique lens of values, strengths, and aspirations. This isn't merely a philosophical exercise, it's the most practical foundation for sustainable achievement. Success congruence operates through four essential dimensions that combine differently for each individual. Contribution defines the impact you're uniquely positioned to create, the problems you feel called to solve, the people you're driven to serve, the legacy you wish to leave. This goes beyond traditional notions of career achievement to encompass how you can best apply your gifts in service of what matters most to you. Mastery encompasses the capabilities and expertise you're intrinsically motivated to develop, not just those that offer external rewards. This dimension focuses on growth that feels deeply satisfying rather than skills pursued solely for advancement. Autonomy reflects the freedom to shape your life and work according to your values and rhythms. This includes both external independence and internal liberation from others' expectations and definitions of success. Connection captures the quality and depth of relationships that give your achievements meaning. This dimension recognizes that even the most impressive accomplishments feel hollow without the right people to share them with. These dimensions interweave uniquely for each person, creating a personal success fingerprint that can't be replicated or prescribed. What energizes one person may deplete another. What represents freedom to you might feel like a constraint to someone else. The key is identifying your authentic combination rather than adopting someone else's formula. Following standardized paths to success is like using another person's treasure map. You may reach the X that marks their spot, but find yourself standing before an empty chest. The landmarks that guided them hold no real value for you because they were never meant to lead to your true goal. This is why so many successful people find themselves achieving everything they thought they wanted, only to discover they were pursuing someone else's definition of success. They followed the conventional coordinates so precisely that they arrived exactly where society told them to go, and found it wasn't where they needed to be. The path to genuine achievement requires first understanding what success really means for you specifically. This involves examining your current goals and assumptions. Are you pursuing that advanced degree because it aligns with your values, or because it's expected? Does that career trajectory reflect your authentic aspirations, or someone else's blueprint for success? These questions aren't abstract. They're the foundation of sustainable achievement. When your goals align with your values, motivation becomes inherent rather than forced. Obstacles feel like worthy challenges rather than arbitrary barriers. The journey itself becomes fulfilling rather than just a means to an end. The key is developing clear insight into your personal success dimensions. What kinds of contributions feel meaningful to you specifically? Which areas of mastery naturally draw your curiosity and energy? What forms of autonomy matter most for your fulfillment? Which relationships give your achievements deeper meaning? This clarity transforms not just the results you pursue, but how you pursue them. Rather than forcing yourself toward externally defined benchmarks, you can channel your energy toward achievements that resonate with your authentic priorities. This alignment creates a natural pull toward your goals instead of requiring constant pushing against internal resistance. Chapter 18. The Integration. Imperative. Becoming a whole life winner. Success that transcends a single domain requires more than excellence in isolation. It demands the artful integration of every aspect of your life into a coherent whole. This truth confronts anyone who has experienced the exhausting cycle of watching progress in one area create setbacks in others. You know this pattern intimately. The promotion that damages your health, the fitness regime that strains your relationships, the personal growth that conflicts with professional demands. The psychology of integrated achievement reveals why these conflicts aren't inevitable, but rather symptoms of a fragmented approach to success. When you treat different life areas as separate territories requiring independent conquest, you create artificial competition for your finite resources of time, energy, and attention. This segmented thinking sets up an endless zero-sum game where gains in one domain must be paid for, with losses in others. The concept of life coherence offers a revolutionary shift in how we approach comprehensive success. Rather than managing different life areas as isolated challenges, it focuses on creating a unified foundation where progress in each dimension naturally reinforces the others. This isn't about perfect balance. It's about intentional integration that transforms potential conflicts into catalysts for mutual growth. The 4 dimensions of integrated mastery reveal how this transformation occurs. Values alignment ensures your actions across all domains flow from consistent core principles rather than competing priorities. Energy management optimizes how you distribute your resources by identifying synergies between different activities rather than treating them as separate demands. Boundary development creates appropriate separation between areas while maintaining their interconnected support of each other. Priority harmonization ensures different focuses complement rather than compete, creating compound benefits instead of forced trade-offs. Think of fragmented success like building separate structures on isolated islands. Each achievement stands alone, vulnerable to erosion and requiring constant maintenance. Integrated success, by contrast, creates an interconnected continent where each area supports and strengthens the others. The foundation becomes exponentially more stable as different domains reinforce rather than undermine each other. This integration transforms how you approach common life aspirations. Instead of treating health as something that competes with work, you design workout routines that enhance mental clarity and professional performance. Rather than seeing relationships as time away from achievement, you leverage them as sources of energy and insight that fuel progress across all areas. Personal development isn't a separate activity, but rather an integrated practice that simultaneously serves multiple life dimensions. Implementation barriers often arise from existing commitments and competing demands that seem to force compartmentalization. However, These challenges usually stem from inherited ways of structuring your life rather than true incompatibilities. The key lies in questioning assumptions about what different areas of life require and finding creative ways to align them through shared principles and complementary activities. The whole life integration practice provides a systematic approach to transforming fragmented success into coherent achievement. It begins with mapping current conflicts between life areas and tracing them to their root causes and how you've structured your approach. This reveals opportunities to redesign activities and commitments around shared principles that serve multiple dimensions simultaneously. The practice then guides you through redesigning routines and environments to optimize for integration rather than isolation. This might mean restructuring work patterns to enhance rather than damage health, cultivating relationships that energize rather than drain professional progress, or approaching personal development as a force multiplier across all life areas rather than a separate pursuit. This integration process requires sustained attention to how different life dimensions interact. You'll learn to recognize early warning signs of fragmentation and make preemptive adjustments before areas fall out of alignment. This creates an upward spiral where progress becomes increasingly self-reinforcing rather than self-limiting. The ultimate goal isn't perfect balance, but rather purposeful integration that allows you to pursue extraordinary achievement without sacrificing wholeness. This transforms success from an exhausting juggling act into a natural expression of who you are across all dimensions of life. This mastery of integrated achievement represents the culmination of all previous concepts explored in this book. It brings together the psychology of perception, the neurology of habit formation, the power of environmental design, and the importance of authentic alignment into a comprehensive approach to sustainable success. When these elements merge seamlessly, you transcend the common trap of compartmentalized growth, where progress in one area undermines another. Instead, each dimension of achievement reinforces the others, creating an unstoppable momentum that feels natural rather than forced. Your successes flow from an integrated core identity rather than fragmented efforts, allowing you to maintain extraordinary performance without the exhaustion that comes from constant internal conflict. Conclusion. You've reached the end of this transformative journey, but in many ways, you're standing at the beginning of an entirely new way of experiencing achievement. When you first opened these chapters, success likely felt like something to chase, an elusive target that required constant pushing, striving, and willpower to pursue. Now you understand that extraordinary achievement isn't about what you do, but about who you become and how you see. Throughout these chapters, you've discovered how perception literally creates your reality, shaping what opportunities you can recognize, what actions feel possible, and what results appear available to you. You've learned that identity determines behavior more powerfully than willpower ever could, and that strategically designed environments make success automatic rather than exhausting. Most importantly, you've seen how these elements combine to transform achievement from a constant struggle into a natural expression of who you are. The science of neurological conditioning has shown you why winners don't just work differently, they see differently. Your reticular activating system now knows to filter reality through the lens of possibility rather than limitation. Your dopamine systems have been redirected to make progress addictive rather than draining. Your identity has been reconditioned to make extraordinary achievement feel congruent rather than threatening. Yet understanding these principles intellectually is fundamentally different from embodying them completely. In the days and weeks ahead, you'll face moments when old perceptual patterns attempt to reassert themselves. You'll encounter situations that trigger habitual limitations rather than expanded possibilities. This is not failure. It's a natural part of the transformative journey. The key is remembering that these moments of challenge are precisely where the greatest opportunities for reinforcing your new perceptual foundation exist. Each time you consciously choose to view circumstances through the lens of possibility rather than limitation, you strengthen the neural pathways that make this perspective increasingly automatic. Every instance where you act from your expanded identity rather than contracting into old patterns deepens your embodiment of these principles. You now possess something far more powerful than techniques or strategies. You have a fundamentally new way of seeing yourself and your relationship with achievement. Success is no longer about beating others or proving your worth. It's about transcending the perceptual limitations that kept you competing on the wrong playing field altogether. Your greatest possibilities have always existed within you. They were simply waiting for you to develop the perceptual clarity to recognize them. Now that you understand how to align your neurological conditioning, environmental design, identity, and perception with your highest potential, extraordinary achievement becomes not what you pursue, but who you are. The path ahead isn't about becoming something new. It's about allowing your authentic greatness to emerge naturally as you release the limitations that were only ever perceptual to begin with. This is your invitation to fully embody these principles, to let them infuse every aspect of how you see and interact with the world. Your extraordinary life awaits. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening and for investing in yourself. I believe in you. Your potential is endless. Now go out there and create the life you deserve.